Welcome to the Creative Chats Podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome, friends, to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artists, makers, and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. You can connect with me on my website, which is mikebrennan.me. And over there, check out the resources I've created just with you in mind. I know what it's like to be slogging it out in the trenches, trying to create things, stressing out, and struggling with inconsistency, with just not knowing when you're going to show up to create and not seeing your visions actually materialize into things that you've accomplished and achieved. And so if that's you, I would love to invite you to check out the daily creative habit resources that I have. There's a free Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, we would love to invite you into that community where you can be surrounded by like-minded creators of all different kinds. It's entrepreneurs, it's visual artists, it's musicians, bakers, dancers, you name it, they're in there. We would love to invite you there, as well as if you're looking for something, a methodology, a practice, something to help you, hold you accountable. I have what's called the Daily Creative Habit Journal. Now, this is a 90-day experience, self-guided, where you show up, you set intention in the morning and say, here's what I'm going to create. And at the end of the day, you check back in with yourself and say, did I do what I said I was going to do? Did I create? And if not, why? And if I did, what did that look like? Simply just for you to make sure that you're actually keeping the promises that you're making to yourself and seeing work happen. Because it's through small daily deposits and consistency that we actually get traction in our creativity and follow our curiosity and think, what's next? What do I want to do? How do I want to show up in this world? And what do I want to make that has my fingerprints all over it? Whether it's a business, whether it's a painting, whether it's a cake, whether it's dancing, videography, photography, the choice is yours as far as what your creativity looks like. But oftentimes we fail when it comes to a system that helps us and sets us up for success. So if you're interested in the Daily Creative Habit Journal, you can check that out on dailycreativehabit.com or go to Amazon. And even Amazon's, in the different countries, you can go to your particular Amazon. It's print on demand, so it can be printed and shipped right to you direct from Amazon. And I will put the link to this in the show notes if you're interested as well. Now, for today, I have a guest on, Casey Berman. And Casey is an ex-lawyer. Now, I know you may be thinking, like, why have an ex-lawyer on the Creative Chats podcast? But let me tell you, we had a great conversation about creativity, about curiosity, and just following along Casey's journey, where he said, one day he just realized that he wasn't fulfilling his desires to be creative, and the role at which he was in just felt like it was maybe more stifling. And perhaps you have found yourself in that place, or maybe you find yourself in that place right now where one thing is ending and something else needs to spring to life. And maybe you're in that messy middle, that transition of going, this isn't working anymore. I want to go on to something else, but I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. Well, Casey, through his own journey, actually even started to coach lawyers who wanted to transition out of law firms into their own businesses or their entrepreneurial journeys or whatever comes next for them. And he started Leave Law Behind, and has now even branched out beyond that to help people who are not just lawyers, but people who are looking for that transition of what comes next. And so we talk about the role of creativity, we talk about the role of curiosity, and Casey gives some really practical insights and steps in helping us navigate this kind of journey. So I know you're going to really enjoy this conversation that I have with Casey. And at the end of the show, we drop some links and you can follow him like usual. Those are going to be in the show notes as well. So without further ado, I'm going to get out of the way here. And here is my creative chat with Casey Berman. Well, Casey, welcome to the Creative Chats podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I love what you're doing. So honored to be here, flattered to be here. So thanks for all the work you're doing. Appreciate it.
Yeah. This is going to be a fun conversation today. I know it. Just talking about some curiosity, some creativity, personal growth. I'm sure all sorts of things we're going to touch. But before we get too far into there, Let's just dive a little bit into just the context for you, your background. So, for the sake of the listeners, let us know a little bit about like, what you're doing, kind of what you transitioned out of, and what your world looks like today.
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you. Great to be here. My name is Casey Berman, and I always joke that I'm 51 years old, so graduated college mid 90s, went directly to law school, and I always joke that I didn't like blood, so I didn't apply to medical school. Wasn't the best at math, didn't be an engineer, went to law school, right? And I laugh about that, but it was true. Really didn't think that critically about it. Just sort of did it. I know there's a lot of other people out there who did something similar. Definitely went to law school that way. So practiced for 5 years, software licensing during the .com days in San Francisco, dogs in the office, gummy bears in the kitchen, all that good stuff. And had a great time, great experience. Really appreciate that job. But realized, even though I had a plum job that many attorneys wanted, in-house counsel, it just wasn't for me. It was very proactive, very reactive. I was putting out fires, had to be the adult in the room and risk mitigator, which is needed in the world, just not me, right? I wanted to be more creative. I wanted to be on the front line with the customers. So I did that. Started blogging way back when at leavelawbehind.com, which is my passion project turned business. And over the years, became a real business, and we've helped hundreds, almost upwards of 1,000 attorneys who are very unhappy to leave the law altogether and do something totally different, from marketing to recruiting to sales to biz dev. So that's won't want to bore everyone with my life story, but that's kind of what I've done and what I do now.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for giving us a little window into that. It's interesting, because when you're younger, you're expected to know your life path. You're expected to figure all the stuff out, and you barely know who you are, right? And so you're kind of thrust into making these decisions that are like, okay, here's what my career track, I guess, is going to look like. Here's how I'm going to create my life around this. And you take a stab at stuff. And I would say probably, I mean, I don't know what the stats are on this, but I would think like at least more than half people that at least I speak to have had some kind of thing where it was like, yeah, I started with this and now I'm doing that. I mean, obviously working with the people you work with, are there similarities in stories or certain themes that come up that you've noticed?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with wandering. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being nonlinear. I mean, the world is that way. So I think it's great. My only advice to people, and I do want to make this actionable as much as possible, but my only advice to people, and particularly to people who come to me, should I go to law school? I get that a lot, is think critically about it. You may not be right, but think critically. I didn't think critically at all. I just signed up. My friends were going to law school. I went to law school, make my parents proud. So it's just more of that thinking critically, which doesn't need to take years. Do informational interviews with people in that role. Even if you want to be an entrepreneur, okay, go talk with entrepreneurs. Or if you want to move into another line of business, just don't throw up the website. Maybe talk to people who have coffee chats and so on. So that's all. So I'm all for wandering and doing that, but just think critically about it and pressure test it, if you will. Yeah, I've run into just a lot of people, many lawyers who have they made a mistake. They went to law school. They got in the wrong job, and they're making money and they're doing okay. But a lot of them now are looking to make that pivot, what we call career stage V 2.0, and many are afraid to do so. But we help many to do it. But then also non-lawyers that I run into the business world and personal world. I just have seen so many times where people saw this just isn't working, or they met someone else who steered them the other way, and it's fantastic. It's great. Again, I made the mistake of just kind of diving into things without critically thinking about it. Do the pivots, but just spend a little bit of time, even getting 68% surety over 28%. That's all I would say. It's just putting a little into it. Particularly as you get older, you have kids, the time window is closing, things along those lines. Just that critical piece, spend a little bit doing it. I think that really enhances and adds a lot of confidence to these pivots.
Yeah, yeah. I have a friend actually who she was a lawyer, and very much similar story where she just started feeling like, the meaning and purpose behind things that was important wasn't necessarily tied to what she was doing anymore. And so she actually pivoted away from that. She sold her business, and then she recently graduated from Harvard with a degree in psychology, and so started a whole different career there. And so she just loves that, and she's a lifelong learner also, which helps. But I think anyone can find themselves in that position where they thought it was one thing, and maybe that's not quite it. Maybe it was adjacent to, or maybe it just was, again, like you said, because someone didn't really think, they weren't really critically thinking about something. They were just more following along, or maybe listening to the advice of people around them. When
And
somebody gets to that place, right? Like, can you take us back to maybe you, when you're in this position, you're saying like, this just isn't doing it for me anymore. I want to be a little more creative. Like, what did you do at that point? Like, how did you think, okay, I have next steps. What do those look like?
yeah, no, exactly. So to your friend, I will say to everyone out there who says, "Oh no, I need to go back to school." You don't. That, Mike, your friend did, and that's great. But there's a lot of people, lawyers and otherwise, who don't. You don't need. I just want to say, you don't need to get a secondary degree. You don't need to do it. You can if you want, but you have everything already for that next career, next business, whatever it is. So I just wanted to make that point. But kudos to your friend who did that. What And the good thing also is, when it comes to lawyers, when it comes to anyone, it's not, what I hear a lot also is, oh God, I just wasted all this time. And the point is, you didn't. You went to law school, you practiced for X number of years, or maybe you went to business school, or maybe you started one business that you're winding down, or whatever it is. That is all just a stepping stone to this, because you learn skills, particularly with lawyers. They're the adults in the room. They can put out fires. They can upsell. They can story tell. There's all these things the lawyers can do, these transferable skills. And one thing we help them do is to really understand, this is career stage 1.0. Now you're at career stage 2.0. And we just need to make that transfer. But once we're able to do that, it really opens up the mind of, oh, I didn't waste 18 years of my life. It's just, I'm moving into it. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because we do get that objection. But for me, there were two quick things talking about thinking critically. So I didn't think critically going to law school that much. Got this job, which was a fun job, just kind of the anxiety kind of came, and the lack of creativity came in about halfway through. But there were two quick things that then I started thinking critically and listening to. The first one first story is, I did software licensing. We negotiated agreements. I was negotiating all the time, had the salespeople there kind of hammering me. They want their deal closed. Had the other people on the other side. End of the quarter, New Year's Eve, I was there late all the time, getting it in for the quarter so they could get their commission. Loved working with salespeople. It was fun, but it was very stressful. And the general manager, who was in sales on our office, we closed a deal, made a 6-figure commission. Not just salary, commission. Great guy. He earned it. And he bought me an iPod, the old school, with the 3 buttons and the dial. Well, back then you could engrave on the back, and he wrote, "Casey, thanks so much for your help." Really sweet. I'm very appreciative of it. But he got a 6-figure deal. I got a $60 iPod. Well, it was a little bit more, but I got an iPod. And I remember thinking, there are many other ways to make money in this world besides doing what I'm doing. So that opened my mind to other ways to make money, stock options, equity, and then entrepreneurism followed that. The other story I have is, a few years later, we went to an all hands. Our main company was in England, and you had the engineers, the salespeople, and I was in-house counsel, and I was in the administrative department. And I had admin on my name tag. Now, administration is needed. I do it with my own business, but that just didn't resonate with me. Not to be a diva, but I just said, wait a minute, I don't want to be in the administrative department. So those were two things that really hit home with me of what I didn't want. And, part of knowing what you want is seeing what you don't want. And so that really helped me say, okay, well, what do I want? I want to be in front of the customers. I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive. I want to create things. I feel comfortable with that murky ambiguity of kind of life in some ways. And so the rigidity of law wasn't aligning with me anymore. I felt it. Those two stories really drove that home. So then it took me another 9 months or so. I was getting married that year, but it took me another 9 months, but I finally gave notice and left. Some procrastination, but also some preparation. I did those informational interviews. What does this look like? What does that look like? So, but those two stories really drove home for me, not only what I didn't want, but then got me thinking about what I did want. And I kind of put that work into thinking about that.
Yeah. And, someone may be listening today and they're at a crossroads, or they're feeling that ending of one thing, starting of something else, that murkiness that you just described, um, and thinking, okay, there's possibility here. And certainly I need to figure out what next looks like. Were there things that helped you, or maybe, and maybe this is mindset stuff, or maybe this is just counsel from other people, but that helped you with that transition of going, okay, I know this is ending. I know I'm going on to what's next, but how do you actually do that, quote, successfully?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So the short answer to that is what we call the unique genius. And I didn't know the name back then when I left in '05, but it's what we do at Leave Law Behind. And I'm happy to flesh it out for everyone. If you have a paper and pen or your notepad at home, please take some notes. But the way I found with that transition that was very important was, a lot of people will talk about passion. Where do you want to work? Well, passion, I don't even know to this day. I'm 51 years old. I'm not really sure what my passion is. I love sports. Of course, I'm passionate about my kids and my family. I love to run, but I don't really know. And back then, I definitely didn't. And I really felt like, oh my God, I don't have a passion. And then, you can focus on, well, where I want to. I want to work in tech. I want to work here. I want to create a business that does. Great, but that's not really what you do. That's the sandbox you're playing. That's very different, right? So what I found was very important back then for me back then, and for someone right now, is what skills and strengths do you have? What do you do really well? Whether you want to go into a new job, whether you want to start your own business, whether you want to be creative, whatever it is, get very myopic. I put the blinders on. And it's for any sports fans out there, it's like a scouting report for what an athlete does. Okay. And so you can do strength finders, you can do all of these things, but in my opinion, those are very. I've just seen it gets a little long, and they give you a 50-page PDF report, and you're not really sure to make hand up. I have 3 questions. I'll lay it out right now of how you find this. Go to yourself, your network, your friends, your family, and ask these 3 questions. What do I do well? Compliment me. What advice do you come to me for, besides legal advice or accounting advice or whatever? But what advice? Relationship advice, political, travel, whatever it is. And then what have I done, or what do I do for free? Do I volunteer here? Have I always been the one to plan the parties, whatever? Gather all of these traits, and you hopefully get a bunch. And some people may say, oh, that's woo-woo, what are you doing? Well then, okay, don't listen to them. But many people are going to be very flattered. Gather all of this data and start organizing it. We do this at Leave Law Behind, but what are there kind of schmoozer networker traits? Are there adult in the room traits, sort of quote unquote air traffic controller, herd the cat, and really see where your traits fall. And then say, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is how I add value. Then you find another job that calls for that, or build a business around that. So that's kind of the abbreviated way. But what I've really found that the best way in these transitions is to get very focused on the tangible. What are my skills and strengths? How can I add value? Because that gives the direction of where you should transition to.
Yeah. That's sound advice. I mean, gathering intel and insights is so important when you're at a place where you've got to make some decisions, and you can't just rely on your past experience or even what your current lenses are, right? It's an opportunity to grow and to identify, like you said, here are my strengths, here are skills that are transferable no matter what. They're going to go with me. And how do I build on that? And how do I, it's almost like the thought that came to me was like, you're making something, you have these ingredients, right? And to your point of like, nothing is wasted. It's not like, the last 18 years of whatever you were doing is null and void. You're taking those ingredients and now making something new out of it. And so it's like a new recipe, which is much more hopeful and much more filled with possibility when you think about it in those terms, right?
Well, absolutely. And Mike, I mean, let's do a unique genius analysis on you right now. When you think about your skills and strengths, and obviously I haven't seen you over the years, but just the fact of a podcast host and running a podcast is a job. And so it calls for certain skills. And I've seen some, obviously you're engaging, you ask very good questions, you have a great cadence, speaking, presenting, et cetera, but also the stuff behind the scenes. the questions, the preparation, preparing the guests so I feel confident, getting intake forms, because I know a lot of people are applying to be on the show. Then there's all the technical, like those are skills and strengths that you have. You need to have that EQ for here, but you also need to have that attention to detail when it comes to editing and so on. So, and I'm sure there's a lot more I'm missing, but that's the job description, and your skills and strengths have matches. So whether someone wants to apply for a formal W-2 job, whether they want to start their own business, or whether they want to go into this kind of new thing called podcasting, which kind of has an amorphous description of many, and most people don't know what they're getting into before they get into it. That's that analysis of your transferable skills, and obviously, you've done it, and it's a great fit. So that analysis really lets you see ultimately, can you add value? And then when you add value, well, you make this thing called money. You have stakeholders, clients, audiences that are happy, right? And they're fulfilled, and then you're fulfilled. You're making money. You're of service. It's kind of a win-win-win when you do that initial analysis.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because when I first started this podcast, it was really out of a motivation of me saying, I want to have conversations with people that maybe they would be less inclined if I said, hey, can I have like a half hour of your time, versus, hey, I have a platform where I can share our conversation so it lives on beyond just me. And then leaning in and going like, how do you do that? Learning all the things that you need to learn. And one of the biggest things that this has helped me with has been with honing listening even further, and following my curiosity, asking the questions, like you said. And that is transferable no matter what I do. So,
Yeah,
I have another
absolutely.
part of my business that I do graphic design. When I'm dealing with clients who are in that realm of branding and logos, I'm asking questions, I'm listening, I'm showing up with the same energy and the same focus as I would if I were on the podcast. And so, to your point, these things become a part of you, your rhythms, your skill sets. It's the tool bag that you can reach into and use these things no matter what you do.
That's
And
right.
I think I love that you have helped and you are helping people transition out of something and then into something else. And I'm assuming that your landing on that was because your own journey was so significant and you learned so much out of that. Is that correct?
It is. It is. And I'll give you a little background again. Don't want to bore people with my life, but graduated in '99 from law school, went to in-house counsel, went to one job, and then I was in-house counsel through about '05. Left the law. I kind of leaped in the net will appear. My mom put that magnet on my refrigerator. She was worried about me, but she came to my apartment in San Francisco. I'm born and raised San Francisco, raised our family there. We live on Maui now the past few years. We moved out, but I'm a California, San Francisco kid. And then over the years, '05, '06, '07, '08, '09, a few times the career services office from my law school in San Francisco they didn't know what to do with some students who didn't want to be lawyers. So they said, you know what, there's an alum of our law school. He's downtown. Take the subway, go get coffee with him. They would send maybe one or two or three students a year to me, and I get coffee, and they're like, what's it like not to practice? So I started having these conversations, '06, '07, '08. I'm like, wow, law student, it just jogged me. So in '09, I started writing on old WordPress blog about my journey. It was kind of private, just how I left the law. The blog posts are still up there. I'm a little embarrassed by the writing, but it's all good. And I started writing about it. Well, Google picked up on it, and it kind of took off from there. And we built a course and everything around that. It really started for me that I wanted to. I don't want to say I had seen the light, but I had definitely seen something else besides law. And I definitely had found jobs that now I liked. I had started on my entrepreneurial journey. I had seen that commitment and that passion. And I knew attorneys were miserable. And not all of them, I don't want all of them to leave. The world needs good attorneys. But for the ones that aren't aligning with the job, I wanted them to see, particularly with the internet and digital and just the expansion of jobs that were happening in the world at that point, and even currently, I wanted them to be able to see that there was a better way. So, and I had seen that better way, and I wanted to share that with people. And if they don't want to do it, that's fine. The devil they know, okay, fine. But if they are willing to kind of take that step, I wanted to help.
Yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, many times we're creating things that we wish we had at a certain point in our lives. And so it's kind of returning back to and serving that version of ourselves, going like, this is the information I wish I knew, or this is the person I wish that could come alongside me. And I think that's what makes the work even more powerful, because it's not simply just I had this idea or I'm following a trend, but it's actually rooted in something much deeper in us. So as we think about that, how does creativity show up in your life? Obviously, the things that you're doing require creativity, but like, how does that look like? What does that look like? What role does that play in your life?
Yeah. Well, as a lawyer, I did some research, and creativity, the etymology of it comes from create, obviously, but the Latin was to bring forth, to produce, and those sort of synonyms. Okay. And creativity and we think of creativity as really the environment or the domain of just a few select people, of a few select artists, people who can paint well, people who can write well, or and so on. And that's not true. Creativity is bringing forth. And so, really, what we see with a lot of our career guidance and career coaching is kind of bringing forth not only a whole new career, not only a whole new existence in a way, but a mindset shift, a totally different way of looking and being in this matrix reality world, earth, however you think of the simulation. And so that's something that really gets me going, is because you're dealing with lawyers who are not artists. They're the other side of the brain, and so they think they are not creative at all. And so what we show them is that, one, you actually are creative because you're creating a new argument, you're creating a new story, you're creating new ways to advocate for your clients, and that's often very true. Now, they may push back then and say, yeah, but it's all templatized. It's the same argument I'm using over and over again. It's mundane and boring. Okay, got it. Well, now then, let's take those skills and strengths that you have, though, and let's create a new existence for you. Let's create a new way of looking at this world. They say a miracle really is just a shift in perspective. And so the miracles that I try to create here is really someone who is risk averse, beaten down, working a million hours a week. We know those people, lawyers and otherwise, who are very burnt out, and many of them suffer depression, anxiety, alcohol, drug abuse. It's rampant in the legal industry, and I think even beyond. But we really create or help them create this new way, this new perspective on how to view their time here and how they can give back and how they can add value. It is so heartwarming for me. It is so fantastic. And then I check in with folks and I say, hey, when they left the law, they're in a new job, 2 months, 2 years, 5 years later, and they say, Casey, I'm just loving it. And they're like, I pinch myself. I can't believe I'm not a lawyer anymore. So that's a lot of some examples of the creativity that occurs in my role.
Yeah. I have those conversations almost daily where it's pushback about creativity too, where people think I'm not creative. And really what they're saying is they're not artistic. And then I
Yeah.
say, okay, here's a moment for education. And I say, it's okay not to be artistic. Not everyone's going to be interested nor feel drawn towards, the visual arts, performing arts, etc. That's fine. That's a part of creativity. But creativity is so much bigger than that. And it's when we think about creating the life we want to live, creating, our home, the way that we dress, the way that we approach problem solving. Some people are really gifted in organizing and creating systems and things of that nature. And so, to really be able to harness that so that it is a tool and it is something that people realize, yeah, that actually is part of my world. I just didn't label it as such. And then
That's
once we
right.
label it as such, we can do it with intention and purpose and start to see some power behind it. And those are the conversations I love to have. So I'm glad you highlighted that.
And the problem solving part is huge, because there was an example of, I won't get into the details, but they weren't able to get this thing, this X, this coverage, this X, because you needed Y before you could get the coverage X. But, well, we don't have the requirements for Y, so we can't get X. So then there was this problem solving that came, well, why don't I just pay for Y even though I don't really need Y, so I can get to X? Oh, yeah, well, we could do that. Well, it's a little more money and you're not really using it, but it gets you to really where you want to go. And I'm fine. The money is not the issue. Oh. I mean, there was this problem where we to get to X, you needed Y. Well, why don't I just pay for it even though I don't really need it? Well, of course, it's that type of unlocking, which seems so obvious once you have it. But you can sit for days and go, God, we're going to have to find another such and such. No, you don't. It'll take a little money or a little this. It's that creativity and the problem solving that just greases the rails, accelerates things, gets everyone on board. Are you fine paying a little extra just so we can get this deal done? Absolutely. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. And, creativity, the thing I've learned over time is creativity really, when you lean into it, it opens up also curiosity. And curiosity has been something that has been like a superpower once I realized that I didn't have to either avoid certain things or I could ask questions. I could probe deeper. Have you experienced like moments where you're like, creativity is really unlocked? I'm sorry, curiosity has really unlocked some important doors for me or pathways. Maybe share some experiences.
Absolutely. And so going back to the etymology, apparently it comes from the word care and curiosity, to care about something, to have that commitment, that investment. And when I found that out, that blew my mind about curiosity. Because we think of curiosity as being innovative and being a genius. Einstein was curious. I'm not curious, right?
Yeah.
Not at all. And so for me, having that idea of curiosity has opened up new sliding doors or new ways of thinking, going back to that mindset idea that I never would have considered. It comes from in business and in writing. When I go down these rabbit holes, when I talk to new people, what we've been able to do is to find more blockers and elements about what prevents lawyers from changing careers. So there are one of the biggest issues with our business is lawyers I'm unhappy. I don't want to be a lawyer anymore, but I'll think about it. I don't know if I'm going to move forward. I mean, there is all of this risk aversion. And so, at first we just thought, well, they're risk averse or they're scared or the devil, but the curiosity of like, what really is blocking them? And at Leave Law Behind, we've mapped out over 20 to 30 fears and blockers, unique blockers that prevent lawyers from moving forward, that keep them paralyzed. Everything from, I don't have a non-lawyer resume. That has prevented people from changing okay, well, we'll help you build one. Obviously, I don't, what will my mom and dad think? Will I make more money in a non-law job? But one of the big things, for example, is I don't want to leave the firm. They're like family to me. Okay, wow. So as we drilled into these, you realize that once you leave, they may send a thank you, but like they're not going to talk to you anymore. It happens all the time. And not that they're being mean, they're just moving on with their life and you're going to move on with your life. It's okay. Maybe one or two people will, but I can't tell you how many lawyers have stalled the benefits of their life because they are so concerned about having to talk with the partner at the law firm and this disappointment. There were other areas where we got into what's really lawyers are averse to: procrastination, to perfectionism, and just really drilling down. So we really geeked out a lot on the blockers and obstacles that lawyers have to career change and life change. And it's been absolutely fascinating to see, in many ways, many of these mundane little things are blocking their path to enjoying their new life.
Yeah. You touched on one thing, which I think, this is a universal thing, no matter what field you're in, no matter what you're doing, and even apart from your career, but fear. And fear blocking you, thinking, what if I do this and I fail? Or what if I do this and the people around me judge me? Or the fear, even for yourself, to go, what if I can't live up to the picture in my head of what I think things should look like? The perfectionism part of that. Are there things that you have talked to people about that helps them move through that?
It's a core part of our coaching. And we have a ton of stuff on our website that's free that we get through, but it's a core part because it is, particularly for lawyers, risk averse lawyers, but I hear it outside of lawyers as well. We hear it all over. What'll happen? Maybe they'll realize on day 2 they hired the wrong person and they'll fire me. What if the market changes? What if? Everyone's very concerned. And ultimately, and run with me on this, but ultimately that fear is a fear of death. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it spirals. Oftentimes it's subconscious, but okay, I'm going to leave my safe job for a new job, but then I might get fired. And then if I get fired, I'm going to be sent home. Then I'm going to start running out of money. I'm going to deplete my savings, deplete my 401k. Then I'm not going to be able to afford my house anymore. So I'm going to have to take my family and my spouse and go downsize, which is going to be embarrassing. Then I'm going to still have no money. Then my spouse and my kids are going to get fed up with me and they're going to leave. Then I can't even afford the smaller apartment. So then I'm going to have to live on the street. My parents are going to be embarrassed and will shun me. And then I'm going to die in a cardboard box under a freeway overpass. Now, I know that sounds dramatic and we can giggle at that, but that is what is in our mind consciously, but usually subconsciously as to why. And then they say, whoa, wait a minute. And they're thinking of that freeway overpass near their house. And they're like, I don't want to die there. So then they stay in the job. And it's really crazy, the spinning out of control that we can do just so we don't. Now, the angle there is the way to kind of solve that is one, I'm not asking you to quit your job tomorrow. Take some baby steps. Go do an informational interview. Go research the job. We're only going to take that new job out of the law once you realize that you've got a very good salary. And sure, they could fire you day 2 tomorrow, but they're not going to want to. You know how expensive it is to hire someone? They're not going to fire you day 2, right? So there's all that. The other thing, so taking the baby steps, going there so it's not as fearful, it's not as overwhelming. But the other angle that we really talk about is fear as a signal. If you're having that fear of, oh my God, well, one, you're kind of interested in it. Like you wouldn't feel strongly if there wasn't something there. 2, you wouldn't feel so strongly and afraid if you didn't want to get out of your current situation so badly. So fear also, when you kind of take a breath and observe it, kind of step out of who you are and kind of look at this fear, put it on the table, you realize that one, take baby steps. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow. Take baby steps, mitigate the fear that way. And 2, it's actually a positive. It's a signal telling you something if you're going to listen to it. And the third one is when you actually write it out on paper and put it on a screen or actually a hard copy piece of paper and put it under the light, the fear starts to cower. You look at it and you go, really? I'm afraid of dying under a freeway overpass? Oh my God. You know, and you're like, are you kidding me, Casey? Come on. And it just cowers a little and you shine the light on it and it's not that big a deal. So those are some ideas I have about how to deal with this really strong blocker that we call fear.
Yeah. Love that. Very practical for sure. And again, I think transferable no matter what you may be dealing with in terms
Exactly.
of the fear. Talking about curiosity, talking about creativity, this sense of having agency over yourself and being engaged with your own life, right? Making these decisions. This is going to naturally lead to a sense of like evolution, not only of your career, but also of you as a person. And so along those lines, is there something that you're personally thinking about as far as like a next? Maybe there's something that you would really love to push into, something that you'd love to do that hasn't materialized yet.
Yeah. One, thank you for asking. One thing I do, exercise I encourage everyone to do is talk to their future self. Talk to your past self, your 15-year-old self, talk to your 75-year-old self. Have that conversation. Is the 75-year-old self saying, Casey, man, boy, I know we wanted to be safe, and I know there was a lot of football games to watch, but really, man, you didn't do it. Like, or is it like, wow, Casey, in your 50s and 40s and 50s, you took some risks. I'm so great. Like, have that conversation, right? And so I did have that conversation recently, and the conversation that came to me was keep it up, leave it all behind. The other work, I do some other consulting work, but keep it up, grow it even more. We got to help people. But also there were some whispers I had from non-lawyers saying, hey, can you help us with what you're doing for lawyers? So I started CaseyBerman.com. It's just in its infancy, but what I want to do there is write about the type of stuff we're talking about here, and also ultimately kind of take what we've learned at Leave It All Behind and help non-lawyers to make this change as well. Because I think particularly where AI is going, where the world is changing, where the kind of the importance of college is decreasing a little, and certain norms, and I think some for worse, but I think many for the better. Certain norms are falling or changing. That's what I hope to do under at Casey Berman.
Love it. Yeah. And the thing is, after having conversations with people for a number of years on the podcast, I've realized that even though people are speaking about very specific things as far as their experiences, their methodologies, there's always something that is universal that someone can listen to and go, okay, I'm not a lawyer, but what Casey's talking about here, that is readily applicable to my situation. And that's the thing, that's my takeaway. And so I think if we're willing to listen beyond sometimes a context where we go, that's not for me, we really benefit from the wisdom that is shared from other people's lives. And I love that you kind of underscore that and say, these are things that people are dealing with, outside of transitioning out of law. And you want to help those people as well. Um, and in terms of just even your own creative process, when you're going to, maybe it's create a coaching method, or maybe it's creating a piece of writing, or whatever that looks like for you. Can you talk a little bit about, like, what does that look like for you? Do you get an idea and then attack it? Is there a lot of research first and then you kind of flesh something out? Just a little window into your creative process personally.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I walk my dog. But what I do is, to your point, and I go old school, I do voice to text. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I will do is I will have my headphones on, I'll have my phone, and I used to be a perfectionist, but I don't really start with the idea. I usually start with either the pain, I've heard of a gap or a pain out there, or two, there's some rumbling in me to create. We all have that feeling like, wait a minute, when you get parched, you're like, I need water, or you get hungry, you feel that feeling. There's that feeling of, wait a minute, I'm getting this like something's going on. I try not to ignore that. Usually go walk my dog, talk out loud. I'm the geekiest guy. I got my phone here, and I'm like, all right, and I'll email it to myself or into a Google Doc or whatever I have on my phone. And I don't worry about grammar. I'm literally stream of consciousness. What I then do, and I'm happy you brought that up, is I listen to a lot of um, podcasts, all types of stuff, but I listen to like spiritual stuff, like Alan Watts, Ram Dass from the 60s and 70s. I'll listen to, Buddhist monks, or listen to, Stoicism and so on. And then it's so crazy how I will pull, to your point about pulling from another industry, I will pull ideas or frameworks or structures from that can then I'll apply. I'll take 5 or 10 of those frameworks and I'll apply it to this rumbling of an idea to see almost like this framework can give shape to this amorphous idea I have. So, like for example, Alan Watts, he was a British philosopher. He came to California and he sort of brought Buddhism to the U.S. in the 60s and 70s. A lot of his talks are recorded. And so he talked about how you can either view the world in something that's kind of a play, like the Buddhist play. They view it as kind of a play, an act, a dream, if you will. Or the Judeo-Christian, which is more of like something to be built, right? And there are different ways of looking at the world. And so it was really interesting to see that dichotomy, that binary issue of how he was describing it. And who knows, there could be a third way to look at it. So I took that framework down and sort of applied it to some ideas I had, and then some boxes started to fill up. So that's kind of how I do it. Don't ignore the rumbling in you. Get it down on paper somehow. Don't think you have, fingers to keyboard and you start worrying about periods. Just get the data out, even if it's talking to yourself. And then the third one is kind of look for what I call buckets, if you will. Look for a framework to give shape to it. Even if it ultimately isn't what you use down the road as your ultimate framework, it can still help you in the interim. So those are ways that I kind of get a handle on these invisible things we call ideas.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing your process there. And there's something that resonates with me because I think about, like, I learn best when I throw myself into something, not reading about it ahead of time. Cause I'm like, if there's something that somebody's telling me and I don't have a ready application for it, it's kind of in one ear out the other. But if I'm like, I need to solve this problem, I need to figure this out, most of the times I'm looking for a model of somebody else around me, like who has done this or who is doing this. And
That's
again,
right.
to your point, maybe it's not a one-for-one exchange, but it at least gives me a starting point to go, oh, okay. Now, if I take that and tweak that and make that my own, or take these pieces from different places, then it starts to inform what I'm doing. And it gives me, oh, here's the process. Here's the how I'm going to do this. And so I love that you share that. Yeah.
And all we need is direction, right? When you've got that rumbling and it's murky and ambiguous, it's nascent, you have no direction. Which way do I go? Is this even going to go anywhere? So I'm just looking for something to. It was E.L. Doctorow was a writer, a novelist, and he said this about life. I extrapolate it to leaving law, but he said about writing a novel, which was, writing a novel is like driving on the highway at night. You can only see so far as your headlights, but you're going to get home. And that has kind of guided my life for the past 20 years. I love that quote. I love the insight and the genius behind it. It really just saying, take a step. Just what the headlights shine on, that's what you do. So when you get these frameworks, just take that step and then take the next step. You do need patience for that. And you do need a level of trust and patience. But if you have that, it'll get you home.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, Casey, we're rounding home here. I can't believe it's time already, but as we're kind of wrapping things up, where can people find you? How can they connect with you? Lay some links and some places on us if people want to dive a little bit further with you.
Absolutely. No, thank you for the invitation to do so. I'm on LinkedIn, Casey Berman SF for San Francisco, Casey Berman SF. You can find me there on LinkedIn. I post often there. LeaveLawBehind.com. Even if you're not a lawyer, Casey, CASEY at LeaveLawBehind.com. Or you can check me out. I'm just starting there at CaseyBerman.com, CaseyBerman.com. You can find me at any of those places.
Love it. Love it. And I'll put those in the show notes for people to just click and really easily follow along. Thank you for this conversation today, Casey. It's been great. I've loved just hearing your aspects of your personal stories and your experiences and just how you approach creativity, even at this stage in your life. So thank you so much for that.
Mike, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. So thank you.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.